Good morning. My name is Lisa Sylvester. I want to first start by welcoming you to Anytown University's Student Affairs Department and say that within our growing university and student enrollment, your position here will play a crucial role in the success of our students. So today we're going to discuss the student affairs history, amendments involving student affairs, federal laws and regulations, areas of discrimination, diversity, and expectations. So the student affairs arose from a variety of strands of college work. One strand emerged from the advising and counseling positions that developed on campuses, which was the personnel movement of the late 19th and 20th centuries. The other was through proliferation of administrative and management functions as institutions of higher education grew in size and complexity during the 19th and throughout the 20th century. So the first dean of men was appointed at Harvard in 1870, and the number and type of advising, counseling, and administrative and management positions continued to increase throughout the 20th century, which then gave us the birth of student affairs. It was a way also for the university leaders to lighten really their workload and to provide the students with the resources that they needed in order to be successful. So the amendments we're going to talk about are the First, Second, and Fifth Amendments. The First Amendment, mostly with our student affairs, and what we worry about is the freedom of speech. So what Congress says is Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress or grievances. So again, as far as student affairs are concerned, we're really, the biggest issue that we're dealing with is freedom of speech. So we have to understand that our students have a freedom and a right to protest, but that does not constitute the freedom to disrupt. So it's a fine line between protest and freedom of protest and then the disruption of the campus and the affairs that occur on campus. So the best defense for our university is to show that regulations are content and neutral and that are sufficiently narrowly tailored to serve a significant governmental interest and to leave open ample alternative channels for communication of the information through the public. So we're seeing now more and more on campuses across the country that campuses are opening freedom of speech zones so that students have the ability to exercise their freedom, their rights, and their freedom of speech, but to do it in a manner in which they are not going to infringe upon the rights of others. The next right we're going to talk about is the Second Amendment, which is the right to bear arms. So like most rights, the right secured by the Second Amendment is not unlimited. So what that means is this right is not a right to keep and carry any weapon whatsoever and in any manner whatsoever and for whatever purpose. So nothing in our opinion should be taken to cast doubt on long-standing prohibitions on the possession of firearms, by, especially by felons, the mentally ill, or as far as laws forbidding the carrying of firearms. But there are some qualifications and conditions that should be met. And this is a huge contention as far as college campuses are concerned across the country. So rules about carrying guns onto a campus or a school premise are not determined by the Second Amendment. That's really important to understand. They're actually determined by the laws that should balance the considerations of the safety and security. So for example, you wouldn't want to have children at a daycare where the daycare is carrying or have open carry policies where their daycare workers can carry a gun, because you have those guns around small children, and then there's some safety issues concerned around that. So campus carry is actually solely a product of legislative enactments that confer a derivative entitlement based on the Second Amendment and not of the right for the Second Amendment. So this policy is still growing within our university itself, and as we start to make decisions on open carry, that will come out through the Student Affairs Office. The next amendment we're going to discuss is the right to due process, or the Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment creates a number of rights relevant to both criminal and civil legal proceedings. So in criminal cases, the Fifth Amendment guarantees the right to a grand jury or forbids double jeopardy. But on the education side of it, it's going to protect the students or provide the students with due process of the law. So any kind of honor code violations. Students have a right to be able to present their case and to defend themselves so that they are not, per se expelled, or they don't have honor code violations against them, or they don't have something on their permanent record. And this is their right. And their right is to be able to pursue life, liberty, or property. Part of that life and liberty is their education. So some state and federal regulations that we're seeing that are popping up more and more as far as our Student Affairs Department is concerned is Americans with Disabilities Act. We are seeing an influx of students who are coming in with 504s and with IEPs, and they are required to be provided with additional support for their disabilities. So federal, state, and local laws, as well as institutional policies, affect the practice of the student affairs professionals every day in their work in order to educate our students. So issues relevant in higher education today include, again, like I mentioned, the Americans with Disabilities Act, where if one has a disability or a relationship or association with an individual with a disability, they do have rights under that act. Another big one is the Jean Cleary disclosure of campus security policy and campus crime statistics. So with the influx of school shootings, this has become a big deal because now the student affairs is playing the liaison officer a lot of times between what is going on campus with campus security and with the safety of the students, and then acting as that liaison officer with our students and informing the students of what is going on campus. What are the safety issues? Are there enough safety stops for students? Do we have enough escorts for students if they're walking alone at night? What areas should they avoid if there are some danger areas, and what are we doing about those dangerous areas? So that is a big, huge piece of our student affairs office, because we want to make sure that our students are safe and that they feel safe so that they can pursue their education. Next, we're going to discuss some areas of discrimination. This is also a hot topic in the news as of late. So some areas of discrimination that we have come across with our university are Title IX, which is gender discrimination. Title IX is a law that includes any harassment involved with the student, with a worker. Some students have some rights as faculty and staff as well, depending on if they're student workers and how they're treated as that student worker. With that comes the idea that institutions cannot control their actions and speech in the same manner as employees. So we fall under First Amendment as far as the freedoms of speech for students, which the employees sometimes have to follow a different role for what they can say and what they can do in the work area, since they are contracted and since they are employees of the university. So in general, a campus's human resources sexual harassment policy can cover everyone, including actions on or between student employees and students. But harassment which occurs while a student is working would be covered under employment policies. So it's kind of a gray area. Does it fall under student affairs? Does it fall under employee policies? And that's where the student affairs and the employee policies would have to work closely together. The next one we're going to talk about is race. So there is a large gap in a large education gap that we are seeing now. And so one of the areas of discrimination is that some colleges, they feel that there shouldn't be a race criteria for acceptance, whereas some do. So there is some area for discrimination there as far as if race is considered as for acceptance into a college, was that why they weren't accepted? And so Student Affairs is starting to get some more complaints about that. And then of course some other areas of discrimination, religion, and are there student groups that are practicing different religions? Are they encompassing everybody? Is everybody included? And then sexual orientation, the gay and lesbian movement, bisexual. So is everybody included? Do they have fair access? Does Student Affairs provide everyone, regardless of race, religion, sexual orientation, the same opportunity and the same access? Which brings us to diversity, and diversity is a huge deal. Here in student affairs, we want to ensure that everyone has equity. That does not mean that everyone is treated equally, but what it means is that they all have the same shot, or they're all starting in the same place as far as the education race is concerned. Is there fair access? Does everybody have access to the same resources in order to ensure that their education is going to be the best that it can be? And is inclusion happening? So diversity plays a big deal because campuses still continue to wrestle with ways to meet the needs of the diverse landscape of students enrolling in higher education. It's estimated that our nation is growing and that the workforce is being filled by over 50% of a diverse community. So this means not white, this means African American, female, Asian American, mixed race. So a majority of our workforce is going to be the minority of the workers. So that makes it a very murky line as far as our diversity. We want to push for diversity because we know that with a more diverse campus, we're not only growing the education for our workforce, but we're also growing the education for our student base in general. So some expectations that we have of our student affairs workers is that student affairs is going to be responsible for the advising of the board on all matters affecting student life on the campus and all of its colleges, comprising of the university system of any town. The Office of Student Affairs is going to also provide a system-wide leadership and support in furthering campus efforts to provide for the intellectual, cultural, social, recreational, emotional, and personal development of all students. So as a unit of academic affairs at Anytown University, the Office of Student Affairs includes departments that serve student needs in gaining access, support, and progress through their collegiate years. Admissions, student records, financial aid, on-campus health services, campus security, academic and career services are just some of the offices that provide services for students. So the Office of Student Affairs is going to ensure that all campuses comply with federal, state, and local laws, as well as board policies when conducting business. Student Affairs staff are available to answer questions to help students find the programs or support services they need to be successful at Anytown University. The student life encompasses programs such as new student orientation, leadership and volunteer programs, recreation services, resident life, student conduct, student organizations, and campus diversity programs. So this list is actually not even inclusive or comprehensive. Each institution has a variety of programs for students. So the Office of Student Affairs promotes a student-centered campus environment concerned with the development of the student success outside the classroom. So while this was a brief introductory tutorial, I just wanted to thank you for being here and thank you for starting your journey with our university. If there are any questions, please inform or refer to your Student Affairs Employees Handbook, or you can contact me on my office cell phone at 757-814-6590.